Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel, and welcome to today's live stream where myself and George are going to be discussing where Cesar Azpilicueta ranks amongst the Chelsea legends. Over the weekend, as we became world champions, Azpilicueta completed the set, having been on the losing side in the 2012 Club World Cup final against Corinthians. Over 10 years later, finally put that to bed. 2-1 win after extra time against Palmeiras, and he lifted the Club World Cup to complete the set and win everything there is to win with Chelsea Football Club, and in my opinion, put himself right up there into the top tier of legends. I mean, George, rightly so, the four, like that tier one legend list includes probably the four best players to ever play for the club in Petr Cech, Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard, and JT. But how significant was completing the set and becoming the first player in the club's history to win everything? Is that for Azpilicueta's legacy at the club?
Well, it's hugely significant, and you could see after the match how much it meant to him. You could see the emotion in his face, and even the way he approached the game, took it seriously. Some players possibly coming into the mix might have seen that as a, one that you just put in your downstairs toilet and you forget about the medal. For Azpi, I think he knew very well it was on it. He probably wouldn't have said it in public, but he knew very well it was on his mind that it was the one missing. And you'd look back at your career when he does eventually retire and think, that's the one that got away. But he made sure it didn't get away. And to complete a full set, particularly when you're at one club as well, it is something truly special. And again, he's probably a type of player who doesn't get the recognition he necessarily deserves, because he's one that goes, behind the radar almost with some of the fans and particularly players. But depends what you mean by legendary status. But yeah, I agree, mate. For me, I think on a trophies perspective, in terms of what he's achieved at Chelsea, that's really the benchmark of why so many foreign players are attracted to a club like Chelsea, because of the potential that it has, where you can literally go on and win it all.
I mean, to be fair, as I mentioned, those four names, no one's debating them, but Azpilicueta has won every single thing you can win. The only person to win all the trophies. He's more successful at Chelsea Football Club than John Terry, than Frank Lampard, than Didier Drogba. I mean, that is, for someone that we signed for £7 million back in the summer of 2012, to be the most decorated football player in Chelsea Football Club history, considering the unbelievable players we've had over the years. I mean, it's, when you look at that, it's quite ridiculous, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's staggering. Yeah, and we touched just a moment ago before we came on air that he's actually been involved in a lot of sides that have probably not been at the pivotal level in terms of Chelsea history under Roman Abramovich. You look at the sides that we had at the beginning with Mourinho, the ones under Ancelotti in that 2010 period when we won the double. He went through some managers that didn't particularly do very well, some transitional periods where there were some question marks over the signings and managers, the likes of Rafa Benitez, Scolari. So I think he probably wasn't there under Scolari, actually. Sorry. But, to do that, he said 2012, he's done it in 10 years. Just a remarkable achievement. And he is the most decorated player at the club. And I think he deserves every bit of recognition that he gets through this. He really does, because he goes into Chelsea folklore as a true legend. There's no question about that.
I mean, being Chelsea's most successful player ever might not last too long, because if we win the League Cup at the end of the month, N'Golo Kante and Marcos Alonso, of all people, join him as having won everything at the club. So it's an exclusive club at the moment, but in a couple of weeks, there might be a couple of others that join him there. I mean, the thought of Marcos Alonso winning more trophies winning like all the trophies at Chelsea, something that, Terry, Lampard, Drogba, etc. couldn't do it is quite something. But George, to take you back to the summer of 2012, obviously the big signing that summer was Eden Hazard after he won the Champions League in Munich. Azpilicueta kind of came in under the radar, £7 million, signed from Marseille. He'd won a couple of French cups there, and I think he might have won a French Super Cup, like the equivalent of the French Community Shield. I know it's a while ago now, but what were your kind of initial thoughts when we signed him? I know £7 million is an absolute bargain, but back then it was, a lot more than it probably is now. Can you remember any initial thoughts you had on bringing him in?
I didn't know anything about him, to be honest with you, and I thought he was going to be a bit of a squad player that would embed eventually into a first team player. But, looking back now, I mean, I would have thought in a million years he would be club captain, winning all the trophies that he had done at the club. As you said, all the focus was on the potential of Eden Hazard. We've had it with previous players that have come from France, with Florent Malouda and the like, where we've bought the French Player of the Year, hasn't worked out, and all the eyes were on him. And like you said, came in under the radar. No price tag really, and there were no screams about him or anyone coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh well, watch out for Azpilicueta. He's the next big best thing at right back." But throughout the years, I mean, he's certainly been one of the most consistent players we've ever had. Very rarely have I come back from watching a game or seeing a game on telly where he's been really, really poor or made a fatal error. I haven't. I mean, so £8 million well spent for all the money that we have wasted on transfers of the potential that haven't worked out. Fair play to Dave for getting that £8 million and just bossing it, really.
I mean, I've just brought up on screen now the all-time Chelsea appearances, most appearances. I don't know how. I think this is relatively up to date. It is from Wikipedia, so please forgive me if this is slightly out. But I don't think it's that far out, actually. I think it could be spot on. Azpilicueta ranks in at number 7 on the all-time list, 459 Chelsea appearances in total. Only behind Petr Cech now as the non-Englishman on that list. I don't know if he'll overtake Cech. Probably not. It depends if he's going to stay another season. But I mean, everyone else there is on the list is English or from the UK in that top 10, other than Azpi and Cech. I mean, appearances, longevity. I mean, 314 appearances in the Premier League alone. Obviously it is quite some achievement. I mean, George, in terms of appearances, obviously he's not going to move any higher up the list. At best, one up the list, but that doesn't really matter too much. Is that something you'd factor into kind of legend status, as it were? How many appearances you made? Obviously, it's important to be. You've got to be in the top 10, really. Or well, top 10. I know Didier Drogba's not on that list, but he's a legend. But you've got to be, either in that top 10 or you've got to have done remarkable things for the club if you're not.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what you mean by legendary status. Some people can have a legendary status by being at one club for their whole entire career and not winning anything. Others will be a legend because they've won everything there is to win, like Azpilicueta. Others could just be legends for the impact that they make. So they might not have as many of the appearances, but come in and win Chelsea a title, or or away with the fans. And I think it's another great achievement that a foreign player has managed to. I know that we obviously have great legends of the game. I consider Gianfranco Zola a legend of Chelsea Football Club, who didn't win an awful lot and, isn't in that appearance list either. But for Azpilicueta and Petr Cech particularly to break that mould, again, they'll always go under the radar because of the characters that they are. If you're comparing them to someone like homegrown players with JT, with Frank, and then you go back to people like Chopper Harris, Peter Bonetti, those types of players. But for Azpilicueta and Cech, I mean, it's particularly in the modern era, it's very, very difficult in such a short space of time to establish yourself as a club legend, particularly at a club of Chelsea's stature, where we're winning trophies left, right, and centre anyway. So everyone involved technically won the same trophy, but yeah, I think it's harder for those foreign players sometimes, but especially for a right back as well. So it's crazy, really. But all credit to him, and I don't take appearances too much into it.
But I mean, how obviously George, he's not gonna. He would have over his time would have played in some very good Chelsea squads, Chelsea teams. But as we touched on earlier, also played in some definitely inferior squads to the likes of Terry, Lampard, Drogba, etc. would have played in. Certainly, after the first years of Jose, after Carlo, there were some poor times. Villas-Boas the team was awful. Scolari, the team was bad. He's definitely played in some worse teams than those guys did. Definitely inferior squads in terms of quality. He's seen off every challenge possible at Chelsea. 3 different eras, I guess the Mourinho era, Was the first, was kind of he was part of that second time round. All sorts of different areas and rebuilds as well. And the amount of managers we go through, the amount of players we sign, and the amount of players we sell. The fact is, he survived multiple world-class managers, and he survived world-class players being signed as well. So how much does that say about him as a player as well, and how highly he's thought of by a raft of different managers?
Yeah, shows his class, shows his quality, and the fact that he's been through all those managers and yet seemed to be more or less in the starting 11 within those changes of managers. You usually get, a new manager comes in, new ideas, new team, but he's withstood all that and remains still to this day club captain, even at a time where perhaps he's coming towards the end of his career and hasn't performed particularly well this season for his standards. He's also coming from a nation that has been blessed with players, particularly in defence. You look at Gerard Piqué, Sergio Ramos, those types of players. And, he's managed to work his way back into that side at his age as well. So I think through all of that, he's, again, keep saying he goes under the radar, but he's not the type to scream and shout and maybe set the world alight. But he is you can't deny that he's one of the most consistent performers of the decade at the back. I think any Premier League team would take him gladly. Still, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting. He's one of those that, as you touched on earlier, he's not someone that perhaps gets the headlines, gets the attention, gets spoken about a lot, because he's not someone that can change a game in a split second, or scores important goals, or is a bit of a showman, a bit of a playmaker type player, or like a main centre forward that's going to fire you to glory. As you said, he goes under the radar. But the fact is, as you said, there's very few times in his 10 plus years at Chelsea that you'd actually sit there and think, shit, Azpilicueta was dreadful today. Like there just wasn't there. The consistency levels. All right, I have some games where he's not great, but he'd never be like drop an absolute howler and he'd be like a 1 or 2 out of 10. At worst, he'd be like a 4 or a 5, but more times than not, 7 out of 10 every week. And do you think when you sort of put in consistently good performances without doing anything spectacular, that you kind of do go under the radar, and that if he played further up the pitch or in a different position, we'd be having a totally different conversation in terms of how he's thought of?
Right, it's the nature of football. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it? You look at the back pages, the headlines, the stories. People see highlight snippets these days because they haven't got the time to watch a full game. And of course, he's not going to get the headlines. Even going from a right back point of view, he's not a Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's not a Kyle Walker. He's not bursting down the wings, attacking players, getting crosses into the box. I mean, he's not even a Reece James. Reece James would probably get more headlines. But what he is a warrior. A never say never attitude. Digs in. You can see that he's a voice on that pitch. He's definitely a leader of men. And that's come through his experience of big competitions. Hence why I think he played in that game the other night. And yeah, we have to accept that his time at Chelsea is coming to an end. But I think he reminds me a lot of someone like a Ivanovic or a Michael Ballack, where a lot of people have their things to say about these players when we're not playing well. But when they don't have them in the side, you watch when Azpilicueta leaves Chelsea eventually, maybe we'll start to see some of the cracks emerge in terms of that warrior factor on the pitch when things get tough, and who's leading the dressing room, and that consistency at right back, even if he's not first choice. It will be very interesting to see, because you almost don't notice it when they're playing, but when they're missing, that's when the cracks start to emerge. So I think that is as good as positive or compliment that I can applaud Azpilicueta with, is that he goes under the radar but does everything consistently well.
Yeah, no, mate, I would agree 100%. I mean, in terms also of him as well, I think he was actually signed as a left back. Was he signed as he was signed? I think he was signed as a right back. But he's over the years he's played 4 different positions. He's played in a back 4 as a left back and a right back. In the back 5, he's played as a right wing back, and he's also played the right hand side of a back 3 as a centre half. And that the versatility as well is another remarkable factor, that to play 4 different positions across the back line. I mean, people think, left back, right back, but virtually the same. But actually, it is very different, as is playing from right wing back compared to right back in a flat 4. and also playing as a centre-back and a back five as well. So to show that versatility as well, just as another string to his bow in terms of how good a footballer he actually is and his footballing brain.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very, very talented right back. I think most teams in the Premier League would still take him today in terms of their first choice right back. I mean, that just shows the class and quality he has. Pitches in with some goals as well. I mean, we're probably one of the rare ones that actually saw one of his goals in an FA Cup match. I don't know how many goals he's actually got for the club.
I think he's got 9 or 10. It's not very many.
So we can say that we were there when Dave slotted one in the net. It was quite a cheeky finish as well.
Cheeky back heel.
Yeah, he's got it. He's got it in the bag. And if you going back to the whole topic of the show of him being legendary status, I think you're right. I think he's in that first bracket with those names you mentioned at the top of the show. I think you can't say Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, Petr Cech, and John Terry without saying Dave Azpilicueta. You can't now.
No, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, there will be people that say, "Oh, he shouldn't be in there because he's not as good a player like as some of those guys." No, perhaps he's not like the best player, but I think there'd be better players than Azpilicueta that aren't in that top tier of legend. But it's more than just your ability as a footballer. It's your longevity at the club as well. He's been here over 10 years. The fact he's been a captain as well plays some parts to it. The fact he's won everything there is to offer is another thing. The fact that he's survived multiple different managers, multiple rebuilds, played in multiple different positions. Those are all contributing factors as to why he is in that top tier. And that 4, for me, has certainly become a 5 now.
I mean, how weird is it and how amazing is it that if you think about how the likelihood of becoming a professional footballer is almost 1%.
It's virtually zero. Really,
but then to also the likelihood of signing for a club and then winning everything there is. So when he sits down and looks back at his career, he honestly doesn't have any regrets because
it couldn't have been any better. It literally
the only negative is that if he was greedy, we could have won more league titles. But
I suppose the only thing he might say is, maybe in my international career. No, but even that, I can't remember. I don't know.
I think he was part of the squad.
I'm not sure if it was part of the World Cup squad back in. Maybe not, but he's definitely been part of some European Championship squads for sure. I think he has.
But that's picking us.
Yeah, exactly. But you sit back at it and you think he actually couldn't have done any better in his Chelsea career.
I mean, and it would be amazing to see actually how many players have won it all. I don't know.
I was having a little look at this. The best Man United. Remember that Man United side back in like mid 2000s, like 2007, 2008.
Yeah, Rooney, Tevez.
The Rooney, Tevez, Berbatov, Ronaldo one. Wayne Rooney, Manchester United legend, the top goal scorer of all time for Man United, top goal scorer of all time for England. At United, they missed out on the Super Cup. They didn't win. He didn't win it all. That was the only one that's missing because they lost 2-1 to Zenit St. Petersburg in the final. Like that's the only one that Wayne Rooney's missing. So I mean, look at how much of a legend Wayne Rooney is for Manchester United, and how long he was there for. I think he was there over 10 years as well, and he didn't win it all. And Manchester United, one of the biggest football clubs in the world, and they didn't do it. So you look at the players that could potentially win it all at one club, and it's very, very difficult to do.
Well, it's almost impossible. I mean, you've got the timing's got to be right. You've got to be at the right club. You've got to make sure you don't have any injuries. I mean, so many factors, and just how it's just so nice that a Chelsea player can end their career from Chelsea, whether he goes on to play for another club, I don't know, but to then go, I actually won everything there was available. That is amazing, and he can relax. I mean, even Frank Lampard and John Terry now still have the things that we should have won more and blah blah. They still have regrets about England, but I don't think Azpilicueta can, because even the Spain side that he didn't get in, they still went on to do great things without him. So how can you argue, really? You can't. They won everything without him. So.
But also, it's not like you get some players that are part of a squad that barely contribute to winning the trophy.
Get a medal,
yeah. The fact is, like, he's actually played a pretty major role in everything we've won, in all the trophies that he's won.
Yeah,
he's played a pretty major role in that success. So it's not, as I say, it's not like he just sat on the bench or an unused sub. You might make 1 or 2 appearances in that competition, you pick a medal up at the end of it. He's actually
like
played
Ross
a major.
Turnbull with Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. And like other shitters like Rob Green as well, like getting a Europa League.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on, like this. The guy's played a major part, and that's another big thing as well. Is like not just winning the trophies, but how major a role you've also played in that. Because players can pick up medals for winning trophies without really doing very much. Be part of the squad, make a couple of appearances in a competition here and there, but to actually be a main part of winning that trophy is a totally different thing as well.
And you know what? So many people throw around legend too loosely. That term gets thrown around so much. Like, oh, he's a legend. Like we banter, like we consider Torres a legend just for scoring that goal.
Oh, he's not a legend. No.
Havertz, Chelsea legend because he won us the Champions League. We sing about it. We laugh about it. But I mean, even if you're talking about, like we said, you can go through Chelsea's history and say that certain players are legends of the club. But again, I mean, you have to say, if you're going to use the term legend, Azpilicueta is a Chelsea legend. There's no question.
He's in that top bracket. Those, I mean, we might just to round out, George, I guess, like if we're doing a bit of a legends tier list, the top 5, your standards, we've touched on it before, Cech, Drogba, Lampard, Terry. That Azpilicueta is now in that group, 100%. Yep. I mean, just a brief word before we round out. Obviously, as I touched on before, N'Golo Kante has got the opportunity to join Azpilicueta in winning everything that there is to win at Chelsea. But I mean, I've seen people on Twitter, etc., saying that, oh well, Kante should be in that legends group as well if he wins everything. But for me, it's a no, based on the fact, 1, longevity. 2, like kind of player he is, etc. I just don't think if Kante wins it all, he goes into that legend group. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
It's so tough, mate, because then, again, it depends how you use it. If England won the World Cup, if England won the Euros, everyone in that squad would have been a legend by definition because they've done something that England haven't done.
Calvert-Lewin would have been a legend.
Well, but I'm saying like those men.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
those players, because the 66 squad is still considered. Oh,
yeah,
they're all legends. They've all got knighthoods.
Squad,
they're all sirs and lords and all the rest of it. And it's like, okay, well, they won a World Cup. We're in that every 4 years, so we should be. There should be more. Hard, mate, because I think he has done it at Chelsea. I mean, I know he's done it elsewhere as well, but I think he will. I think, if you look through the years of Chelsea as a club since, we were created, these players were in the best era of Chelsea Football Club's history. You have to consider Chelsea as a whole club, and therefore anyone who wins everything at the club surely has to be and is an actual, a proper contributor to that side. And like we said, we're not touching on these players like, Matthias Hesman, Premier League legend, or things like that. I think he does, but I get your point. I do understand your point, because perhaps he won't be at Chelsea for as long as Azpilicueta. But I think,
I mean,
when we look back,
longevity
Chelsea,
definitely a part of it. Longevity is definitely a part of it. I'm not disputing Kante's been pivotal in a lot of those trophy wins, but I'm just not sure when you think Chelsea legends, like Kante, for me, unbelievable football player, fantastic. So glad he's played for the club, but he wouldn't be one that springs to mind when you say, "Oh, name your Chelsea legends." Like he wouldn't be one of the first off coming out my mouth.
No, but then again, be careful what you wish for, because let's say, for argument's sake, that Chelsea never win anything again. And we come back on this podcast if we're still running in 50 years' time. Well, we'll be dead by then.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah. Well, all right, we'll be close. We'll be close. Let's say we have this conversation in 30 years' time, and Chelsea are back to the days where we were a cup team, 4th or 5th every year, don't do particularly well. We look back and say, look at those players. Kante completely changed our team. Won everything there was to win. So I think you look back on those things and then think Chelsea legend. But perhaps now, because everyone's, because the club is such a trophy winning machine, that it is difficult to sometimes separate those real And people can have personal legends as well,
Yeah,
just
of
people that
course.
they look up to. I mean,
Yeah.
we touched on it again at the top of the show. I don't know if it was recorded or not, but Zola. I mean, people
Zola,
still say
yeah.
Chelsea legend Zola, but what did he win? Not particularly a lot. Is he
Not
a
a
top
lot,
goal
no.
scorer at Chelsea? No. But it was the era, it was the magic he brought. It was the first real big foreign superstar investment that we had. So it all depends on moments, I guess, as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. That does play a massive part. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting debate. And Azpilicueta is definitely now
Definitely.
that four has become five. Last thing on it, George, he's out of contract in the summer. He's got an offer on the table from Barcelona that's been widely reported. I don't know what his decision is yet. He was asked about it in the Club World Cup in one of the press conferences before then. Didn't say anything on it. Was non-committal on that. If you're Chelsea, are you offering him a new deal? It would only be a 1-year deal. He wants 2 years. I think he wants 2 years with an option for a third. Chelsea prepared to offer 1 year plus one, which would probably be performance or appearance related bonuses to trigger that extra year. Is it a simple decision? We need to keep him round, or is it time to move on?
Well, that's up to him. But I mean, from a Chelsea point of view, we have to operate in the right way. And I think Chelsea must offer him some sort of a contract for the service at the club. Personally, if it was me in charge of a football club, he deserves that 100% for what he's given to Chelsea. I know we've got this policy of this 1 year roll on for a certain age gap, which again, I think is fair because we also need to can't be too sentimental. We are a football club that are aspiring to win things next season. So we can't just give him 3 years because he's Azpilicueta, and he knows that. And if he wants to go and play for Barcelona, that's a new challenge, perhaps, and he's won it all and leave on great terms. But the important thing for Chelsea is don't do what we did with Frank Lampard and almost say we're not offering you a new deal. I think that's terrible considering what he did for our club. So I think we need to deal with it in the right way. So he should definitely have something on the table, and that's then up to him, I think.
Yeah, and I think ultimately Chelsea fans will respect whatever decision he makes. But George, if he does decide to move on this summer, how important is it that we give him a proper send-off, testimonial, a proper chance to say goodbye to the fans? Because we've not seen it that often. Like even Frank Lampard didn't get to say a proper goodbye to the fans when he left. And we've seen it with Gary Cahill as well. Not quite the same in terms of club legend, but won a lot of things for the club and was a big figure there. How important is it that if Azpi moves on, that the club give him the send-off he deserves, testimonial and all other bits and pieces, etc.?
Yeah, it is important, and that's one of that's when you look back at footballers when they do interviews and things, they do regret those things. I still think Frank Lampard has a bit of a bitter taste in his mouth at how he left Chelsea because of the circumstances. He wanted to stay, didn't get the contract, still wanted to play competitive football, probably didn't want to go to Man City but had to. So all those things, but again, it's to do with timings, isn't it? I mean, can't do it in the middle of the season. Some people frown upon it and say it's a bit too much. The whole JT taking off on 26 minutes looked a bit embarrassing on the face of it. If you look at it, I get the sentimental value of it, but
it was a bit cringe, wasn't it?
He was started play. Why didn't he just play the whole game and then we do something at the end? I don't know why he had to come off. Drogba, we didn't really do anything other than like carry him off the pit. It was all a bit silly. So I get it, and I hope he does get the send-off he deserves, but it will probably just be, a tunnel at the start of the game where even the opposition team clap him on or something, and he gives the armband over.
We should be giving him a testimonial. If he wants a testimonial, he should have it.
Yeah, if he wants it and the players want it, that's fine. But again, it's scheduling it in, isn't it? It's even like great players didn't get testimonials, so it's just one of those things that has to fit. He deserves it, though. He deserves it.
He definitely deserves it. And the club if he moves on this summer, the club 100% have to do some sort of send-off for him, whether that's a testimonial, whether that's a chance to go on the mic at the end of the last home game of the season or whatever. He needs that opportunity to say goodbye to the fans properly, because that's the least he deserves as currently Chelsea's most decorated player ever. But yeah, mate, I've enjoyed that one. Guys, thanks for tuning in live. George and myself have decided that Azpilicueta is definitely a Chelsea legend, and he's in that top tier now, up with Cech, Drogba, Lampard, and Terry. But as always, if you agree or disagree with our thoughts, let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments below if you're watching it back. Please do smash a like on this video. Please do click that subscribe button as well. Subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Looking to get to 400 subscribers by the end of the month. We need to get a little bit of a hurry up on if we're going to achieve that. So please do click that subscribe button. Spread the word. It really helps us out, and we do massively appreciate it. and we will catch you in the next couple of days or so with a preview to Crystal Palace away, which is our next Premier League game. So until then, up the Chelsea and take care, guys.